Simple machines. Everything in the known universe is made up from just a bunch of simple parts. No matter what it is and no matter how complicated or complex that it might seem to be, it is just a bunch of simple parts. You can think about it like this. The alphabet that you know is just a bunch of squiggly little lines. The English alphabet is just 26 squiggly little lines, and with just those few squiggly little lines you can write a very complex book, full of twists and turns. Humor and horror. Wisdom and wit. Perhaps you know about something called Morse code. It is a system of dots and dashes that can be made to represent the 26 letters of the alphabet and all 10 digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. With just two things, dots and dashes, you can represent all English letters and numbers, and with those, you can write a book on the most complicated thing. Everything in the known universe, no matter how complex, is just a bunch of simple parts.
It is the same way with the most complex and complicated machine. It's just a bunch of simple parts. Scientists and engineers have broken down all of the simple parts of machines into just 6 simple parts. But I say that there are really only 2 simple machines, and that the other 4 are just different versions of the 2. We will take a look at this later. For now, we will look at the standard 6 different machines, and what a simple machine really does.
A simple machine is a device that makes work easier. Work, in scientific terms, is when a force is applied through some distance. For example, work is when you slide a box across the floor. Or work is when you carry a load up a ramp. Or work is when you lower a heavy item with a pulley. Simple machines can change the direction of the force. Or simple machines can magnify or concentrate a force. And these few things are just what this lesson is about.
Simple machines allow a person to do work with less effort. For example, the same amount of work is done when a heavy box is lifted straight up. But it can be easier, and thus done with less effort, when the heavy box is carried up a ramp. By putting the box on wheels, it can be done with much less effort, but the same heavy box has been moved to the same height in both cases. So in both cases, the same amount of work has been accomplished. The heavy box is now 5 feet higher than it was.
Recapping, simple machines allow a person to do the same amount of work, which is a force through a distance, with less effort. No one knows who invented these simple machines, and a few are even found in nature. It was simple machines that were used to build many of the ancient wonders of the world. And it is simple machines that were used to make your breakfast today. It was the Greek philosopher Archimedes, more than 2,000 years ago, who identified 3 of the simple machines. One was the lever, one was the pulley, and one was the screw. Archimedes discovered that the lever would create a mechanical advantage. A mechanical advantage either changes the direction of a force, or it magnifies the force, or it spreads out the force, or it does both of these. For example, a simple lever can change the direction of the force and concentrate it at the same time. Archimedes correctly said, "Give me a large enough lever and a place to stand, and I will move the world." Over the next few centuries, more simple machines were identified. And about 400 years ago, the last of the 6 simple machines was identified. It was the inclined plane.
But just what are these 6 simple machines? In no particular order. There is a lever, the wheel, the pulley, the inclined plane, the wedge, and the screw. The lever comes in 3 different types. And the difference is the arrangements of the 3 different parts of the lever. All levers have a load, a force, and a fulcrum. A fulcrum is just the part that props up the lever. The prop up part is where we get the word fulcrum. Fulcrum is Latin for prop up. The load of a lever is just the part that we want to move, and the force is just the part where we push or pull. A first-class lever is like those that are used by elementary students when they are in first grade. It is the typical seesaw. The load is on one end, the fulcrum is in the middle, and the force or effort is on the other end. Other examples of first-class levers are scissors, a crowbar, and the standard light switch. A second-class lever is when the load is in the middle, the fulcrum is on one end, and the effort is on the other end. Examples are, a wheelbarrow, a suitcase on wheels, and a nutcracker. A good example of a third-class lever is your arm. The load is held in your hand. The fulcrum is your elbow. And the effort or force is your muscle that is attached to your arm between the load and the fulcrum.
Recapping, simple machines help us do work by using energy to move something through some distance. For example, you have energy that comes from the food that you have eaten. You use that energy to carry your backpack through some distance. The wheel and the pulley are two more simple machines, but if you take a close look at them, they are just complex versions of the lever. A wheel is really just a continuous first-class lever. Wheels can greatly reduce the amount of effort that it takes to do work because rolling friction is much less than static and sliding friction, but friction is covered in a different lesson. It might be easier for you to think of a wheel as a continuous lever if you think about a steering wheel in a car or a doorknob. A pulley is just a wheel that has a groove in it that keeps a rope on track or slipping off. A pulley by itself does not multiply a force, but it does change the direction of the force. When multiple pulleys are used together, they can greatly magnify the force. Multiple pulleys are called a block and tackle. For example, 2 pulleys can double the force, but you have to pull twice the distance. 3 pulleys can triple the force, but you have to pull thrice the distance. It's not perfect, and each pulley that is added also adds a bit more friction. But a single person with multiple pulleys can lift many times his or her own weight.
Though many round things are found in nature, the wheel is not. It is truly made by humans. The wheel has been around for about 5,000 years and seems to have been independently invented by different cultures with no knowledge from other cultures. Interestingly enough, the Native Americans both in North America and South America did not invent the wheel. They did, however, invent smoking, which the other cultures did not. It is also often said that perhaps humans got the idea for the wheel by witnessing the fabled hoop snake. The trouble with this is that the hoop snake has never been captured for study. The hoop snake only shows up in tall tales, and the first recorded one was in the Pecosville stories that came out of the expansion into West Texas in the mid-1800s. There is evidence that suggests that the first wheels were not used for rolling things, but by potters as they made clay pots.
An inclined plane is a flat surface with one end higher than the other. By using an inclined plane, the effort can be spread out over a greater distance. The same amount of work is accomplished with an inclined plane. That is, the load is raised through the same distance, but the effort is less, but spread out over a greater distance. The same amount of work can be done, but for less effort. You might recognize an inclined plane by its other names, a ramp or a slide. A wedge is simply 2 inclined planes placed back to back. A wedge is used to push 2 objects apart, as is seen here. A smaller force at the back of the wedge is multiplied into a larger force at the tip of the wedge. Examples are axes, knives, and chisels. Additionally, wedges can be used in tandem with friction to hold open doors, but friction is covered in a different lesson.
A screw is basically an inclined plane wrapped around a shaft or a pole. Screws can be used to hold things together, or even to push them apart. Examples of screws are, well, screws, clamps, and jacks. Screws and wedges are really just inclined planes in a bit more of a complex way. While simple machines are commonly thought of as being 6 different machines, they are really just levers and inclined planes. The argument could be made that inclined planes are really nothing more than a stationary lever. But scientists and technologists say that there are 6 simple machines. The lever, of which there are 3 types. The wheel, and some say the wheel and axle. The pulley, the inclined plane, the wedge, and the screw. These 6 simple machines are used to make up very complex machines. Don't forget to look for the lab manual below.